So I wanted to address what seemed to be an absolutely critical claim made by the WHO and by the US doctor in charge of these matters. So the very first thing that happened was I just felt alarmed, because I looked at the statistics and I discovered that it really truly was quite a lethal killer. The mortality rate was 1%. In fact, I found an article, I found a direct quotation from Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's a bigwig in the US in these things, saying that it was 10 times as lethal as a normal flu, and that the kill rate was 1%, whereas normal flu is 0.1%. Furthermore, the WHO, the World Health Organization itself, had said just a little bit before him, I think, that the mortality rate was 3.4%. That is, in other words, this coronavirus is killing 34 times as many people as a normal seasonal, perhaps severe flu. So it's a killer virus, guys. It's an absolutely horrific killer virus. Or is it? Then I thought, because I am a lawyer and I am, trained to inspect and to scrutinise data and evidence and so on, and one of the things that I've discovered is that if you are faced with a bit of killer evidence from an opponent, it really just may be too good to be true. And likewise, if you think you've got some killer evidence on your side, you kind of think, yeah. So, I'm kind of, constituted in such a way from 25 years of litigation to be ultra suspicious. So I wanted to drill into the figures, and what I wanted to do was to, just check the stats. And so the first thing I did was I went on to the Centre for Disease Control website in the United States. This Dr. Anthony Fauci was talking about, he's talking from at least the United States of America about these issues. And I discovered on this centre, which has been this organisation which has been keeping stats and all sorts of things, but specifically the flu, I discovered that 2 years ago, 2017 to 2018, there was a serious flu. I discovered that there are peaks every few years, you get a serious flu. And I discovered by looking at those statistics that in that year, 61,000 people had died. I was interested in this 0.1% figure to drill into the detail, and I discovered that approximately 45 million had got that flu. There was a range of 35 to 60 million. About 810, I think it was, 810,000 had been hospitalised. And actually, this chart is really quite impressive, and it's got a column for deaths and then for hospitalisation, medical centre. People have checked themselves into medical centre with the flu, and then the great unwashed, the vast majority who have had it, but it hasn't really affected them. Asymptomatic, as they like to say. And 61,000 dead, 45 million, but perhaps 60 million who'd got it. There's your 0.1%. All right. So now I went to the famous Worldometer and looked at I doubt there's anybody now who hasn't heard of it. And I looked at the league table of infections and deaths, and I said, well, obviously this 1% or this 3.4%, let's keep it simple, 1% is calibrated against, a calculation of everybody who had got it, including those who've been hospitalised and died, but also obviously including those who were asymptomatic or had got any mild symptoms. Yeah. And I discovered that I hadn't really drilled into the coronavirus situation before. I was too busy, and this came as a bit of a surprise to me. It might not have done it might not do to you. And I looked at the way that they'd calculated that 1%, and it was confirmed tested cases. So it was confirmed tested cases. And actually, I couldn't, quite understand. So if we were to take the 2017, 2018, 61,000, you're looking at the hospitalisation column, basically. because nearly all the confirmed cases as far as coronavirus is concerned are those where, you know, they've been hospitalised and tested. And I don't think they even had the kits back then to test people who checked themselves into the doctors. So I actually looked at the 2017-18 column hospitalisation, got my calculator out and worked out that hospitalisations during that year would mean that the death ratio was nearly 8% for that flu, compared to what we're being told now about the coronavirus, which is 1%. So I was a bit puzzled, and then I thought I must be wrong, and I did some digging, listened to some YouTube videos and looked at some more statistics, spoke to buddies, and got a bit of heat for radical conspiracy type views, I guess. Actually, what was interesting was that nobody seemed to be aware of that figure, certainly at the time that I was talking about it. It was just like that wasn't relevant. What was relevant was, you know, the controversy, what press were reporting in Italy, and they were showing hospital corridors with coffins and people lying on the floor and all that sort of a thing. And you know, I appreciate the feelings of compassion towards the situation, but, you know, why so much now? I embark on a rather optimistic coffee expedition. Perhaps he's saying that the buffet car is at the front of the train. My Polish remains at basic level. Now, one theory, and I'm playing devil's advocate here for the Armageddon doomsters, let's say that it was only the people who were hospitalised had the flu. Only the people who have been hospitalised. Now, if that were the case, I mean, it puts the coronavirus into the territory of, you know, really quite serious diseases, swine flu, measles, SARS territory, but actually it puts it in the territory of that old villain, rabies. Rabies is an example, perhaps one of the only examples, of a virus or disease that if you get it, you die. It's, you know, a very high mortality rate. You know, it's nearly as high a mortality rate as life itself. Now, it seems as if, in many ways, if you drill into Dr. Anthony Fauci's testimony to the House of Representatives Committee, that he was afraid that it could be, because it was simply unknown and they had no data, it could be that lethal. Anyway, I think, you know what, if we put our fears and paranoias aside, I think most sensible, reasonable, rational people would acknowledge that this really does, you know, walk and talk like the flu. There is some novelty to it, but there are other coronaviruses and they're all slightly different. And I think we kind of deep down in our boots know that it is almost certainly what we're looking at, the tip of a pyramid, and there is a very large base underneath it. Goodness gracious me, why didn't the WHO and Dr. Fauci, at a critical point in the timeline of this crisis, just help to allay the fear and the paranoia by making that simple comparison? Well, I've arrived in Gdynia and I'm having a cigarette, so I'm not wearing a mask, which gets you an occasional, what's the word, rude look, I guess. I'm probably already condemned anyway. But in all seriousness, everybody here has got masks on. I don't think I've seen a single person who's... Actually, I have. As I got out of the city, I saw some country folk without masks. And actually, what better place could you choose than slap bang in the middle of the country, away from the controversy? Myślisz
About coronavirus?
about coronavirus?
I don't really believe it because I think our government and world government is doing this for their reason.
Aha. Jak
I
reason?
Money.
Money.
Of course, money.
Yeah, no, sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Do you think the politicians? I mean, as I understand it, in Poland, not many people have died. It's been quite safe.
100, I think, people.
100.
Yes.
Is that all? And yet everybody is wearing masks.
Yes.
And
We must wearing masks.
And everyone has to be locked in at home.
Yes, everyone was very scared. Is very scary about this coronavirus because they sitting at the home and watching TV and TV all day. TV says and everything about coronavirus, nothing else.
Yeah. It's like a virus.
Yes, virus, but in head, not in the air.
A head virus.
Yes.
Do you think which is more serious, the head virus or the coronavirus?
Head virus. Boląca głowa. Ból głowy.
Do you think what is on the television is accurate, is true, is factual?
No, I think no.
Well, that gentleman there went on to say after we'd finished the interview that he thought that YouTube were suppressing footage of hospitals that are completely empty and have no patients, certainly no patients with any condition, certainly no coronavirus admission. So I don't know whether that's a crazy conspiracy theory. It's quite interesting, isn't it, how easy it is to label someone as a conspiracy theorist. And I think, you shouldn't be, as a good lawyer, shouldn't be labeling someone one way or the other. You should be looking at the facts, looking for the truth, drilling into the truth of the situation, in whatever form, shape or form it it comes to you. Stena line, yes. Do you speak mówisz po angielsku? Mogę być. Koronawirus? Tak. Lubisz maskę? Bardzo dobrze. Piękna. Zakaz?
If you don't have a mask,
Tak?
you have a problem in Poland.
Aha, rozumiem. Mam mask. Tak. Co ty myślisz koronawirus? Szalona albo inteligentna?
Very different.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think.
Do you think it's serious?
I think it's serious.
Yeah. Do you know anybody who's died?
I know.
You do. Anyone close to you?
I know 20 persons with coronavirus.
Who have the coronavirus?
These 25 persons have a coronavirus.
Is it serious? I'm sorry to hear that. Are they friends or family?
No, it's friends.
Do you know anybody who's died from the coronavirus? Two.
This is all people, but
As I sat in the back of the taxi, I reflected on the assessment, my assessment of what Dr. Anthony Fauci had said to the House of Representatives. And I find it difficult to accept that someone in such an eminent position, giving evidence to the House of Representatives of the United States of America would get it so spectacularly wrong and make such grossly exaggerated claims, or certainly at least very erroneous ones. And I wonder whether or not I hadn't missed something, and whether or not, as a self-respecting lawyer, I hadn't drilled sufficiently into the detail. Well, it wasn't until much later in my journey, in fact, when I'd arrived at my final destination, that the final pieces of the puzzle, and this particular puzzle, fell into place for me.